Our next reader, and I'm so pleased to even be saying her name because I don't get to see her very often, is a friend of my heart, Paula Neves. She was born and raised in and around the Ironbound section of Newark, New Jersey. Her writing has appeared most recently in The Waiting Room Reader, Volume 2, Words to Keep You Company, the New Laurel Review, and the Newark Metro. She holds an MFA in creative writing from Rutgers, Newark, where she is an adjunct professor of English composition. She's beautiful. Give her a big round of applause.
Thank you so much, Amy. Thank you to Millicent and to the consulate. And it's so wonderful to see all of you, some of whom I've been able to see since Lisbon in 2011, some of you not. But it's always a pleasure to be invited to read at these events. So it's always a little bit tricky deciding what pieces to read for these things. And in deciding which of mine to read, I realized that maybe consciously, maybe unconsciously, I picked three pieces that sort of fit the themes. So it's one short essay and two poems, and these aren't my takes on the themes. So I guess for the first one, it's family. And this is called Climbing a Fallen Tree. I am bedeviled by many fears, but strangely and somewhat ironically, a fear of heights has never been one of them. I remember being small, 5 or 6, gamely traversing the tarred pole trunk of a former tree that was laid between two concrete stepped piles that looked like ossified dinosaur dung. "Look, Ma, I can do it," I wanted to shout as I learned my balance on that pole and crossed and recrossed those piles in a throwaway kids' park in the Ironbound one summer evening in early 1970-something. But Ma, sitting on a bench by the fence, was looking down into her hands, which were upturned on her lap as if she were pondering two very different lifelines, or supplicating God in heaven or God of the streetlight. At 5 or 6, it's hard to tell which, and it hardly matters. Just as it hardly matters that now, 35 plus years on, I can layer the story a bit and say the glimmer of the streetlight fastened above us on another embalmed tree trunk mirrored the glimmer at the corners of her eyes. She was in a bad marriage. She was in her mid-20s, and her life was not in her hands. She was disappointed, but I was disappointed too. I had just crossed a pole raised as high off the ground as I was tall, a distance doubled by my standing barefoot on that creosote pole, but she had not seen it. No one had seen it. Granted, being a handful of feet in the air may be a lot different than seeing for miles perched 200 feet up in an oak canopy, although in both cases, something other than you is holding you up. And the escapades of a 6-year-old learning to understand and maintain her balance may not correlate to a 43-year-old intent on testing her core conditioning, tendency to act much younger than her age, or exercising her unalienable right to push the limits of someone else's liability insurance. But does the real reason really matter? The point is that rising above one's natural height changes one's perspective, or should. So tonight I climbed a tree, horizontally, to see what I could see in the deep well of a clear night, autumn's chill already evident. This tree has lain since Hurricane Irene felled it, angled across my landlord's driveway, its canopy cushioned by the roof of my garage apartment. I climbed slowly, pausing in branch forks to listen to crickets, cicadas, and frogs. I closed my eyes. I opened my eyes. The massive shattered trunk and exposed earth-crusted root system that I had found interesting and somewhat unreal in the daylight made complete primal sense to me in the darks, both in and out of my mind, the awesomeness of it all finally understandable. It was a tree at least as old as I was, likely much older. A white oak that I had stared at for years. A tree that has dropped thousands of acorns in biannual autumns, falling harvests that have fattened the squirrels and dented the roof of my car. A tree whose canopy was the last thing the sun, like a sated lover, stroked at the end of the day. Whose branches, thick as trunks themselves, issued cardinals, blue jays, and goldfinches like ideas. This tree whose thundering collapse barely missed both the power lines and my head. A tree that, as I inched up its mossy northern edge, now facing south, afforded me a diorama view of my lamp-blazed bedroom, where I have had love and dreams and grieved the loss of both. Where two perplexed cats stared out, wondering why I was not the bird their eyes had tracked this morning. This tree whose fall in a hurricane named after a first love could have killed me but did not. This tree that will be memory and pieces tomorrow. I kept my balance on this tree, and no one needed to see it after all. And this is my take on food and family. It's called Capricornucopia, or the Dream of the Goats. Goats appeared at the door, asking to eat the house from the inside out. It was Christmas, so we let them enter. The drink-laden guests parted. Sure-footed on the walnut inlaid parquet, the beasts made for the manger first, ate the fake hay with unbridled relish. The billy goat then eyed the end tables my girlfriends and I had saved from curbs, and I had carried on my back to whatever places we were calling home. All the females followed Billy Boy's suit, whatever they're called, girly goats? I know what they are, but regardless, everyone looked at me as if the goats could see through walls, an insight out of Freud or Foucault. My new girlfriend looked pissed. The goats made for the sofa. Who are they to you, my girlfriend insisted. Stuffing fell about us like snow. The billy goat toppled the tree. Blown glass ornaments flew everywhere. Some shattered, some dangled from his horns like disco earrings. Androgyny went out in the 80s when you were still young, I heard at my ear. I hoped it was the voice of the devil I didn't know, a future lover perhaps, her flutes as piercing, her heart as cloven as any pan I could ask for and have. But it was only my mother who whispered, "Did you ever even turn on the oven?" Then added, "You're starting to get whiskers just like them." Tender, the words went through me like a horn. Mercifully, someone shouted, "They're headed for the table." And so the goats were. Like midnight buffet tourists, they charged the sweetmeats, the mouton cadet, the chanfana like grandma used to make. Cannibalism, at Christmas no less, a faceless relative tisk-tisk. Let them be goats. Let them eat everything, even the bones. And this last one is my take on food and culture and love. And it's a foreign poem, it's a pantoum, Train to Lisbon. We took a train down the Portuguese coast and got drunk. On the wine and pastries we carefully packed in the trunk, we hoisted everywhere on our 2-week Silver Coast junket. The small bottles of Tinto and the pastéis eased our post-argument funk. We stopped sulking long enough to ease the wine and pastries from the trunk, relieved after missing the express and waiting for hours in a park in Kasang. The small bottles of red and the sweets eased our post-argument funk, better than the stale bread we'd bought fresh in Sintra the previous day. We waited sullenly for hours in that park in Kasang. That's not how it happened, I hear you object, because we'd found Byron, not bread, in Sintra the previous day. But lyrics aren't much concerned with the facts. That's not how it happened, one always objects, and sustenance is just one of the fictions of our days. Besides, lyrics aren't much concerned with the facts. So this is what I mean, put a different way. Bread is just one of the fictions of that day, as was that cumbersome trunk, and the sweet drunken talk. So this is what I mean, put a different way. When the train got to Lisbon, I walked. Thank you so much.